Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Back J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number 1 in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
What's going on, everybody? This is Critical Failure. You guys are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. It's going to be the PS2 special this week. So recently I was talking to our good friend Alex Swiggle, and a friend of his, in a momentary lapse of judgment, made the claim that there weren't any classics on the PS2. Now this was something that they later recanted, so no disrespect to Alex's friend, but this got me thinking, what a wonderful intellectual rabbit hole to go down. So that's what we're going to do. This week we're going to be talking about the classics on the PS2, as well as some more awesome tracks from the same albums we heard last week, because I haven't dug up anything new yet. And we got some van casting, and we got some fail bagging, and we got a lot of cool stuff this week. So let's start by going back to the van, as we normally do. I think our first one was from Tuesday, because I seem to remember Monday morning I got in the van, and I just didn't have it in me. I had a nice, dead, silent ride to work on Monday morning. So we're going to go back to Tuesday on the Vancast. But first, it's Inkley Sakura. Inkley playing oh, jeez, I messed that up really bad. But I don't have time to go back and fix it. It's Inkley with their album Sakura Sweaters. We heard it last week. We heard a couple tracks off it last week. We're going to revisit this again. All right, boys and girls, now that we're all safe and sound and having a great time, we're going to go back to the van and take a trip back in time. Talk about some video games. A lot of video games happened during the week, and I can't keep it all in my head. So we're going to go back and see what was done last weekend. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us. Tuesday morning, it's time for the Vancast. Good morning, everybody. It is 68 degrees outside. It's actually pretty nice. It had been very humid lately. The kind of humid where 80 degrees feels like 90 degrees. And 90 degrees feels like it's time to move. But it's actually a nice morning. So I'm off to work, getting ready to do my Tuesday. In the realm of video games, I haven't done a whole lot. I was combing through the sales this morning. But my big focus but my interest right now is I'm watching GOG. Over on GOG, they're getting ready to release their 2.0 client. I had gotten word that it was out, and it turns out that's not the case. So I'm like, oh, come on. Every morning I'll just pop open GOG and see if it does that thing where the client starts updating. The new one's supposed to be a big one. They do a complete change around of the client, and they add a bunch of new features. And their focus is on bringing all the different stores together. So, excuse me. Which is something that we really need right now. So, we'll see. Also, I think the GOG client needed a facelift. I think the original client was it was a great idea. It's the first client of all of the game stores that's completely optional. That said, there's some neat options, but they're lacking a lot as well, especially when it comes to getting gamers connected with each other, right? If you're playing an obscure game on GOG, you should be able to, there should be ways to get connected with the other people who play that same obscure game, right? I know there's a forum, and you can kind of click into that forum, but it's not very intuitive, and it doesn't weigh itself. It doesn't lend itself to have me go in there and, check the forums on, say, Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. There doesn't seem to be any point. So here's hoping they fix that. I'm interested to see what they come up with this new client. Apart from that, I have my eBay store up. I'm paring down a little bit, so we'll see what happens. I have about 15 auctions up, and they're nothing really rare or valuable. Just dumping some PS2, Xbox 360 games. I have a little chess game that I bought for my son, and I gave it to him, and he was like, "Dad, I don't want this." So I have that up for sale. For some reason, handheld electronic chess is really expensive. I don't know why that is. So, time to clear out the room a little bit. We'll give all this stuff a couple of weeks, and we'll see what happens. I have a feeling a lot of this stuff's just going to end up in a bag going back to the thrift store. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that won't be the case. I spend the evenings playing Geometry Dash with my son, which has been admittedly pretty fun. That's his game. His chosen game. Not my favorite game. Clearly one of these rage games that you would see on like a YouTuber's channel. Oh man, I'm so upset, guys. Hit that like button to ease how upset I am. But he likes it, so we play together. I don't really remember my parents ever trying to sit down and play video games with us, even one time. Not even one time. Like, I remember looking at computer games with my dad, playing like computer chess with him on one occasion. And I think that's it. Excuse me, and I saw him playing like MS-DOS Hearts once in the late 80s. So, I don't want to be that guy. So, I'm playing Geometry Dash with the boy. And that's how it goes, man. On the hardware front, I'm looking at new graphics cards. I'm quite a ways away. I think my budget for new graphics cards is going to be around the $200 mark. So, I think you can get like a 1050 Ti, is that what it is, for like $100 now? The $100 budget card that they sell now is quite a leap above the 750 Ti that I'm running. So if I can scrounge up $200 and buy a card, I think it's going to be a major step up, and we'll see what happens after that. Really, when it comes to getting a new card, I'm looking forward to playing the 2016 Doom game. That's really the game that I want to run, is 2016 Doom. Hold on a second. Yeah, 2016 Doom runs on the 750 Ti, but not well enough for me to really enjoy it. So I pocketed that one. I'm going to revisit it with the new card. I'm looking forward to playing Doom 2016. I'm looking forward to playing Street Fighter V again, because I just would like to see that game in more frames. I'm looking forward to playing Grand Theft Auto 5 was another big one. Grand Theft Auto 5 looked terrible. It's to its credit, it's very scalable. I was able to dumb the graphics down quite a lot, but it just doesn't look good. It looks like a PS2 game. And it can be disheartening when you do. Excuse me. I played all the way through Resident Evil 7, and it's disheartening to look at screenshots of that game because I know it can look so much better. It was designed to look a heck of a lot better than it actually looked when I played it. So, you could say that was the catalyst game that got me looking at PC hardware again. Yeah, so, I don't know. I'm still doing research. You got to be careful about these kinds of things because when it comes to PC hardware, it's easy to throw a lot of money down the toilet for nothing. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that one. Excuse me. I stalled out on Resident Evil 7. I took that big loss I talked about last week, and I haven't been back to play it since. That was pretty tough, man. 3 bosses consecutively, and I died walking towards the save spot, and I got to do it all again. It's tough to go back to a game after that. You know? I forgot how hard a loss can be, you know, in one of these Final Fantasy games. With the checkpoints where they don't let you save unless at specific predetermined times. And this is like immediately after. I think the time right before playing was like when I was almost late to work because I was playing till the next save spot, and there was like not a save spot for a long time. So that's 2 sessions back to back that I walked away from with like a sour taste in my mouth. And I wonder if this is why I've never beat Final Fantasy VII, because stuff like this keeps happening. I'm going to give it another try, though. It's just been... I need a chill-out game at night. When I sit down at night, I need to be able to play something that's going to just relax me, you know? And it was that game at first. And now, I don't know. I need to... One really good session, I think, will break that in 2, but we'll see. I played the Capcom like Street Fighter collection for the first time. That was pretty cool. I remember when the Street Fighter collection came out, last year? I think it came out last year. Being super excited for it, and I couldn't get it. It's just too much money. Finally picked it up in the summer sale. Couple weeks back, and I ran it. I played some Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is like the anchor game that got me to buy it. I played some Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, and I played the original Street Fighter. And you know what? I had a great time. I didn't do very well, which is usually the case. Because I just played stock arcade mode. I didn't try and mess with the options or difficulty or anything like that, but I gotta tell you, man, I had a lot of fun. They did a good job on that Street Fighter package. So I'm thinking, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that every Street Fighter game now available on Steam? Because that package has all the alpha games in it, right? And then you got all the 2 variants. And then you got the Street Fighter 3. And then apart from that, you've got 4, X, Tekken, and 5, and all their spin-offs. I think that we're only missing... let's see, what were we missing? We're missing the game that was just called 3, right? That was a Street Fighter game. Then there was, like, some of the weird ones, like EX Plus. Those are the only ones I can think of. Is EX Plus and 3. I don't know. Any Street Fighter fans out there? And by the way, I'm aware that there's a lot of Capcom versus games. Like, we got Marvel versus Capcom 3, but that's it. We don't have 1 and 2. I'm not counting those. That's another rabbit hole altogether. They should bring those to Steam. That'd be sweet. Why don't we have Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on Steam? We got it on Xbox Live, right? That would be awesome. That would be awesome, man. I have the original Marvel vs. Capcom on my Dreamcast. I like that game. I played that with my son when he was 2 years old, and he got so excited he picked up the controller and hit me with it. Ah! That's funny. I think that might be the last time we played a fighting game together. Here's one for you. Duke from the Cartridge Club put out a challenge on Twitter asking for people to submit their best scores from Atari 2600's Hero from Activision. And if there's one thing I love, it's a high score battle, especially with Duke, because Duke is like the Atari champion. He is the king of Atari, as far as I'm concerned. No, there's nobody better at Atari who's actually like someone you can reach out to who will respond to you and like have a discussion. So I would love to throw down with Duke. The only problem is, Hero is a really expensive arcade game, right? Not arcade game, Atari game. It's very expensive. It's an Activision game, so they're not down with you emulating it. You know, if it's a game like a first-party Atari game, you can just emulate, and that's fine. They have them up on Atari Age. The Atari company, hasn't taken any actions against it. They haven't legally come out and said, yeah, you guys can emulate everything, but a lot of the programmers, when they do their postmortems on their classic Atari games, will say, yeah, just download the ROMs. So ethically, you can download those, and it's not such a big deal. But I feel like Hero falls outside of that. The only way I have to play it is, I have it on the Activision Classics for the PS1 that came with Hero, but it's a weird overclocked version of the game. So everything is moving much faster than it should be, and I found it very difficult to figure out and play that way. So I don't think I can jump in on this one. But if you don't know Duke, oh boy, hang on a second, the sun's right in my eyes. Hang on, there we go, I think I'll be fine now. If you don't know Duke, this is a guy worth following on Twitter. And if you got a copy of Hero on the Atari 2600, or if you have a copy of Activision Classics on the GBA, that's another good way to play. And I think there's one other place as well. You can throw down with him in my place, because I really want to, but I don't know, I just don't see it happening. Alright, so let's close with this. What am I looking forward to playing this weekend? And yes, Alex, I'm modeling this after your suggestion. What am I looking forward to playing this weekend? You know what? I think it's time to roll up my sleeves and play Final Fantasy VII again. I can't let myself be defeated by some spiky-haired weeb spaghetti party from Mississippi. No. I've got to charge in. I've got to show these guys who's boss and be the professional gamer that I am. Oh, I hate that term. I got to beat these 3 bosses. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go kick Final Fantasy VII's butt. Finally going to beat this game. See the terrible ending. That game's got a good ending. I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's time to beat Final Fantasy VII. It's time to close that chapter. I think beating Resident Evil 4 earlier this year charged me with the desire to close the chapter on games that I, have played many years ago but never beat. Final Fantasy VII is a perfect candidate. Time to beat that game. Time to actually beat a JRPG. And with that, boys and girls, wow, we ran 15 minutes. I didn't expect it to run this long today. I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you there. All right, boys and girls, we're back in the studio. Now, you know what time it is. I made a claim at the top of the show that we were going to dig into the PS2, talk about the classics, but we got some business first. The first thing we got to do is thank the sponsors of the show. Hey, we come back every single week thanks to these guys. These are the people who are making sure TCR survives against all odds, even with a wife in her 3rd trimester of her 3rd child. We still come back every single week, thank goodness. because of these people. So I owe to them a great debt of gratitude that goes beyond the Patreon offering. To them, I give early access to the show. As soon as it gets done, I put up copies that they can download and listen to. And I also read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. They are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and Konstantin Kelman. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys are having a good time. All right, let's do this. We are going to... what order do I want to do this? I want to talk some PS2. Let's go back to Sakura Sweaters one more time, and then we're going to do some PS2. Stick with us. Okay, the time has come. PS2 Classics. So now if you're listening out there, we're almost 24 minutes in. You've probably spent the first half of this podcast thinking back to your PS2 days and thinking back on the games that left an impression. Which games were they? The first game that came to mind when we had this discussion was Resident Evil 4. Now, Swingle mentioned that, hey, technically Resident Evil 4, when it came out on the PS2, it was a GameCube port. This is the way he explained it to me. I didn't know this, actually, until he said it, but GameCube game, then retroactively brought to the PS2. I don't know why that makes it not count, to be honest. But that's what he said. As far as I'm concerned, I never experienced that game on the GameCube. That is a PS2 classic in my book. Which is ironic because I ended up beating it on PC. But there's that. Now, I drew up a list of games that were classics. This is in no particular order, and it's in no particular amount either. Let's see. We're going to mark that one because I did that already. Starting at the top. First one I got is Silent Hill 2. Now, come on, Silent Hill 2. All right? The Silent Hill series has been around a long time. I remember when the first one came out on the PS1. It was one of only 2 games that I ever remember having a conversation with, a positive conversation with teachers at school. I had a gym teacher who played Metal Gear Solid, and I loved that game, so we would talk strategy. He got stuck looking for the sniper rifle, and I remember telling him where it was. And then immediately after that, he moved on to Silent Hill, and I did as well. Silent Hill was the logical next step. Silent Hill 2 was a game that I got lucky and found out in the wild for cheap, and I still have my copy that I found out in the wild for cheap. Amazing game. This is the definition of a slow, tension-building style of horror. And since that game has come out, the series has really struggled to recapture what that was all about, and with very little success, I might add. Silent Hill 2 is a definition of a PS2 classic. Moving along, we got the Metal Gear Solid games. Look, personally, I think the Metal Gear Solid franchise peaked at number 1 on the PS1. I think that game was the biggest leap forward in a single game in that series has ever seen. But Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3 both definitely earned their place, despite the flaws. When I played through Metal Gear Solid 2 for the first time, I remember being blindsided by the whole Raiden thing because I didn't know that you switched who you played as. I wasn't at the point where I would learn everything about video games online yet. Interestingly enough, I played that at NG's house, and NG was at that point where he was learning everything about the video games online. He was going onto GameFAQs.com, which was the popular site at the time. So when Raiden takes over, I was blindsided, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what happens." So very strange. So the Metal Gear Solid games. Metal Gear Solid 3, I played a little bit later on in life, but it was a great game. It's a great game. I want to go into more detail, but all I can think about is the battle with the End. The old man. And I had a really difficult time with that battle. And I didn't find out until years later if you saved the game and left it alone for 2 weeks, then he would just die from old age when you came back to it. That's the kind of thing that they did really, really well in those Metal Gear Solid games, is that kind of meta. I have on my list Final Fantasy X and 12. Now, let's be fair. Final Fantasy X was never a game that I really played. I remember seeing it some because Angie played it, but 12 was a big one for me. When my older brother gave me my PS2 for, I can't remember if it was Christmas or my birthday, but it had a copy of Final Fantasy XII in it, and that was a big deal for me. I loved it. A lot of people were critical of it because of the, what would you say? Because of the skill system, but I thought it was amazing. it was clearly trying to recapture this MMO vibe, but I was into MMOs a little bit, so I loved it. I really did. And it kind of sucks that to get Final Fantasy XII on Steam, it's so much money. Even on sale, it was $40. Now, I remember hearing the term the Square tax, but this is really, when you look at buying the old Final Fantasy games, you can really see it in action. But hey, man, it is what it is. Let's see. I've got a bunch more left on the list to go over. A bunch more. And I think what's going to happen is when I come back to this topic, we're going to rapid fire some of these games. I'm pretty sure I got most of the ones I have the most to say about out. But we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 more on my list. All right, so here's what we're going to do to break it up. I've got one more van cast. We're going to go back to the van. Then we're going to rapid fire some PS2 classics. The PS2 is a system worth owning, boys and girls. It is. It's a system worth owning, and it's very easily accessible right now. I don't think it'll stay that way. But right now, these CD-based games are the ones to get. And I'm just running into problems storing them. I went crazy and bought ones that I don't really want to own, so I got to clear those out and make room. But it's the system to buy for, in my opinion. All right, so let's go back to the van. I only have 2 van casts this week. It's not a big, heavy van cast week, but I do have one more nonetheless. So let's go check it out. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us.
What's going on, everybody? It is Thursday morning. Hang on, let me turn the air conditioning down just a little bit. Thursday morning, it's the van cast. I hope you guys are having a good morning. I know I am. Headed off to work. 6:29 in the morning. Headed out a little bit late today, but I get to the office early every morning just to account for such a situation, so I don't have to be worried. I've actually been having a lot of fun on the YouTube channel lately. Last night I sat down with Final Fantasy VII and I streamed. I had a quick stream where I was able to knock out those 3 bosses I was complaining about. 3 bosses consecutively, and then they finally gave me a save spot, and then there was a 4th boss. To be fair, after the 3 bosses was the classic scene where Cloud rides the motorcycle and Tifa and the others ride in the car and they escape the Shinra building, and you gotta swing your sword left and right on the motorcycle to like knock other people out. Classic scene. And then when you finally get to the end of the road, there's another boss. So yeah, I played through all that. I got to the flashback scene where you're playing as Cloud solo, and he's like telling the story of how he used to work with Sephiroth or something like that. So in the flashback, you go back to like his hometown. That's as far as I got. And then I reached a point in the stream, it was an hour in, and I was like, all right, let's go ahead and call it quits, because we're basically just having quiet time while I click through an RPG at this point. But it was fun. It was fun. I got through the stumbling block. I had a little bit of a stream. Had some audio issues at the beginning, I'm not going to lie. If you want to go back and watch that, there's time stamps in the description where you can skip all that. But it's been great. I did that, and I played some Mercenaries and Resident Evil 4 recently, which has been awesome. I did a quick stream of that in the morning a couple days ago, and that was a lot of fun. And I've played it since then. I'm stuck on this one level. In Resident Evil 4, they give you 4 stages to play Mercenaries mode in. And the last of the 4 stages is what I've been playing. And the reason why I've been playing that is because there's so many enemies in that 4th stage that it's the easiest one. I feel like it's the easiest one to get, 4 stars in, where I can, unlock new players. The problem is, when you're in that 4th stage, eventually, Chainsaw Guy shows up. But what I didn't realize is it's not the traditional Chainsaw Guy. It's not the Chainsaw Guy from the beginning of the game that shows up in the village scene. No. This guy's twice as big, and he swings around a double chainsaw. They do stuff like that in the later Resident Evil games, and it's not really anything to speak of. This guy's no joke. So I would set it up so he would walk past an exploding barrel, and I would shoot the barrel, and it wouldn't even slow this guy down. I'm giving this guy shotgun blasts to the head, and he's just charging through it. So, I don't know. I can play until that guy shows up, and once he shows up, I'm on the run until the time runs out. Haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do it yet. Now, depending on what the point cap is, it's possible for me to hit the 4-star rank before he shows up. So, I don't know. I'll have to do some math and see if that's possible. See what I would need combo-wise to make it happen. But it's been fun, man. It breathes new life into Resident Evil 4. In other news, a friend of mine and I, from work, have been gifting each other weird games on Steam. We take turns gifting each other just whatever looks strange and is cheap. It started when he gifted me a copy of Getting Over It by Bennett Foddy. I know that's like a classic YouTuber schlock game at this point. What did I give him in return? I gave him something equally weird. I know he gave me that, and then later on he gifted me a game called Progress Bar Simulator, which was like a 99-cent clicking game. Clicking, like, troll kind of game. So, last night I gifted him a copy of Euro Truck Simulator, but not Euro Truck Simulator 2, the one that's really popular. The original Euro Truck Simulator. Because that had dropped down to 99 cents. And I was like, yeah, here you go. And so in response, he gifted me like a surreal, messed up kind of RPG Maker game. I can't even think of what it's called. I want to say The Long Empty or The Empty Hallway or something like that. But it's very strange. Very like, all the artwork is appears to be hand-drawn, but like MS Paint hand-drawn. Very, very bizarre. Trippy. Trippy is the perfect word to describe it. He bought me this trippy RPG Maker game. So I spent some time last night playing that. And it was actually not bad, to be honest with you. RPG Maker games have a tendency to be really bland. I've played through several on Steam. But this at least had sort of a flavor to it. Like, it felt, for better or worse, it felt unique, you know? Didn't feel like I was playing the same old thing again. Oh boy. Okay, what else do we have here? And then to cap it all off, this morning when I woke up, I recorded a complete Let's Play of Love by Fred Wood, the platforming game, which I'm going to post next week. So if you're listening to this on Monday when the podcast typically comes out, that should be uploaded either later on today or possibly in the coming couple days. So I guess that's about all I have now. I just was thinking what I'm going to be up to this weekend, and I honestly couldn't tell you. We got a lot of furniture moving in my house. We've got a new baby coming in September, so changes are being made to accommodate the baby when he arrives. I mean, that takes a lot of work, so that might be my weekend. So it's funny, I'm thinking about video games, and it's like, oh man, what kind of fun stuff I'm going to get into this weekend. But for me, it's kind of the opposite. I'm kind of like, man, in the middle of the week, I get an hour in the morning, and most times an hour or hour and a half in the evening to play some games. I'm not going to have that this weekend, because we're going to be busy moving furniture around. And then on Saturday, I take the kids to the pool, and I take myself to the gym and do my run and all that stuff. So I don't know. For me, my prime video game time is like right now on Thursday in the middle of the week, where I get to do things like play Resident Evil and play, stream Final Fantasy VII for an hour in the evening. So in terms of this weekend, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know Quake, there's a new like map jam sort of map pack out for Quake that I saw a little while ago. Over on Reddit, there's a Quake subreddit, which is not super active, but occasionally when these landmark map packs come out, there's always a post there. So I make sure and follow it. But I have some investigating to do before we can really dig into that here on the air. I know every time one of these things comes out, it always breathes new life into that game for me. So any sort of map pack collaboration, I'm down with. But more information on that as I get it. So with that, boys and girls, let's grab our controllers, grab your hot teas, grab your coffee, grab your low sodium carbonate, grab your soy milk, whatever it is you got. Clink your glasses, gentlemen, because I'm off to the office. I'm going to go do what I got to do, and I'll see you back in the studio. Have a good one.
All right, boys and girls, we're back in the studio. I don't have a whole lot to go over. There's not a lot of comments from... Oh, hang on. We don't have a lot in the fail bag this week, and I think that works out. because I have a bunch of games to go over for the in the whole PS2 thing. Just wanted to touch on a few things. It's not a list. This is not a top 10 list. This is not a list of must-haves. This is just a list of games that left an impression because I want to take a walk through my memories of the PS2. Interestingly enough, I managed to survive the entire PS2 era without ever getting that machine online once. Even when I had a PS2 Slim that had the modem built in. It had the modem built in, but it didn't have wireless capabilities. So you just, hey, it's no big deal. You just had to run the Ethernet cable. But I didn't have high-speed internet at the time. At that time, we had dial-up internet. It was the tail end of the dial-up era. Most people had moved on, but there were still a few hangers-on, who mostly people who didn't have internet-based jobs. I was still working on the trades at the time, so I didn't really need dial-up. I really didn't need high-speed internet. Television and stuff wasn't all based on the internet yet. So yeah. All right, so let's talk some classics. Devil May Cry series. Devil May Cry 1, 2, 3 on the PS2. When I returned to collecting games, this was like about a year ago now, I started making videos, making acquisitions. I had a little clipboard, and I would set aside, these are the games that I want to buy, and then I would go after them, and then we'd kind of open them up together. I was watching a lot of Bithead 1000 at the time, and I kind of wanted to do what he was doing. So Devil May Cry was a game that I got during this time, and I played 1 and 3. I don't think I ever managed to get a hold of the second one. And they're cool games, man. The first one, I think, more than the third one. I didn't get very far in them because I didn't have the patience once I got lost, which is unfortunate because I'm playing it, and it's apparent to me that if I played it when I was younger and more impressionable, it would have been right up my alley. But I can see why they're classics, and I can see why people love them. Moving on, we got Disgaea. Disgaea is a really cool series. It's a little bit cutesy, a little bit more I want to say Japanimation. Do people still use that term? They say weeaboo now, I guess. It's more of a weeaboo kind of game, but it's a cool like tactical kind of game. I think it kind of picked up the mantle for Final Fantasy Tactics, especially. Disgaea was out in the era where there was no XCOM. Right, we had the original XCOM games that had come out years and years and years ago, and people were still kind of starving for an XCOM sequel. Do you guys remember that? This is back when they were making XCOM games that were like shooters, and people were like, what? I just want a regular XCOM game. We did eventually get that, but not when Disgaea was out. So Disgaea was really like, in its time, it was the strategy game to get, at least from what I remember. So I ended up with Disgaea 3 on the PS3, and I have the original Disgaea on PS2, which is it's a really cool game. Again, those made it to Steam, so that's where I enjoy them these days. But Disgaea stands out. It's a PS2 classic. Then we got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series. Again, really huge back in the day, and then it kind of tapered off. But number 3 was the peak of the series. It had the most intricate level designer, and this was in a time when level designers are really important to me. I got lucky, and I got that for $5 at a thrift store when it was still a new hot game. I don't know how I managed that to this day. Now it makes sense. You'd find it like in a thrift store or something like that, but this was back in the day when the PS2 was the system. So, I don't know. I'm convinced the people who owned that thrift store, or maybe it wasn't a thrift store, maybe it was a pawn shop. That would make more sense, because I think they might have just thought it was a DVD or something. Who knows? All right. The next one I wrote on this list is SNK versus Capcom 2, which isn't even correct. It's Capcom versus SNK. But let's put it this way. I put this here as a placeholder for fighting games. The PS2's got a lot of titles from this era that have become really expensive, that are like inaccessible now. But Capcom versus SNK 2 is one of them. I enjoy it on the Dreamcast because I have a CDR that runs it on the Dreamcast. Very cool game if you can get your hands on it. It came out on the PS2. If we're omitting Resident Evil 4 because it wasn't originally a PS2 game, then I think this would be omitted for the same reason. But I have it on my list anyway because that's how I think of it. In addition to that, for the same reason, we've got Soul Calibur 2, which I actually have 2 copies of. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. So if any of you out there want a copy of Soul Calibur 2, hit me up. We'll see if we can get it in your hands. Following that, we have GTA 3 / Vice City / San Andreas. Again, these were games that changed everything when they came out. And GTA 3, even though it's a multi-platform game, I think of that as a PS2 game. It's the first time I experienced it. It's the first time I saw it. was on the PS2. Don't know, who knows? But that's how I remember it. I know it went everywhere after that. Following that, we got Twisted Metal Black, which was, in my opinion, the last great car combat game. Twisted Metal is a great series, and Twisted Metal Black had some problems, but it came out after a string of bad Twisted Metal games, so it was a breath of fresh air. I remember the cinematics being really cool. I couldn't get very far in it, but my older brother beat it with every character, so I remember I got to sit down and watch the cinematic scenes one at a time, along with their finishers, their endings. Just watching my brother go through his stuff. Very cool game, very cool. Twisted Metal Black, definitely a classic. Here's a cheesy one that most people don't like, but in my opinion, it's a classic. Hate me if you want, but it's on my list. Clock Tower 3, an amazing, amazing horror game. This is something a lot of games have done better since, but at the time, it was the only game I knew of where you are running from the killer, and the object of the game is to run from the killer, and that's it. You don't have any real way to fight the killer. Again, there's other games that do it that have done it better since. But Clock Tower 3 had some really cool scenes, especially towards the beginning. A couple things that stick out in my mind, memories from that game, are the acid guy. I remember I think it's the second arch villain who shows up, and he's got like an acid bath, and he dumps like an old lady all the way in the acid bath. It's pretty sweet. I think the first arch villain with the great big hammer and like the kind of curtains on his head, I think that's the coolest. I think it takes the cake for the coolest villain of all the villains in that game. But it's a lot of fun. I still have my copy of Clock Tower 3, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, might have Blockbuster Video tags on it, but I'm not 100% about that. How we doing? 47 minutes in? Alright, I gotta speed this up. Dragon Quest VIII. I can't say enough good things about Dragon Quest VIII, but it's difficult because I never beat it. Overly long game, but it was very charming. It was the first game I ever downloaded the soundtrack to, and my wife actually enjoyed it, even though she had no interest in the game itself. It was the first time I ever heard a fully orchestrated version of the Dragon Quest Overture, which is, in my opinion, a very important piece of music in video game history, especially when you talk about video game music, like music being a big deal on this podcast. So the Dragon Quest VIII Overture, in particular, very, very, very important milestone in VG music history, attached to a game that's very, very cool. I managed to score a copy after missing out on Dragon Quest VII, I think, or Dragon Warrior 7, I guess it was called in the United States. That was the PS1 game. That was really long. Super cool game. Then we have Kingdom Hearts. I never played the Kingdom Hearts games, but everybody loves them, so I mean, they're on the list if you want to talk about classics. I got a couple games on here like that are just on here because they're known and loved. Like Guitar Hero is on my list as well. Look, I never played Guitar Hero, but I'm interested in the franchise now, and when Guitar Hero came out, you better believe that it was huge, and nobody knows that more than Alex Swingle. Alex and I have talked about this quite extensively. Lots of fun. This is one of those things like when the Wii came around. You had people who were not gamers who were playing it. They didn't care about, the Final Fantasy franchise. They didn't care about memory cards or having the limited edition controller. They just wanted to play some Guitar Hero. That's all it was. You had guys who grew up listening to heavy metal or rock and roll or whatever it was and couldn't play guitar but just wanted to play a simple tappy-tap game along with the rhythm of the music that you could enjoy. Guitar Hero was a game that had massive appeal on a scale that we wouldn't see in video game history for a little while after that. I've only seen that happen a couple times in video game history. Guitar Hero was one of them. I've got a few more games I consider classics which pale in comparison. We've got DOA 2 Hardcore, which was a launch title. I love the DOA series. I might be alone on that. When people talk about DOA, they usually talk about the exploitative cheesecake games with the girls in the bikinis. I actually like the fighting mechanics. I remember playing Tekken 2 around 2003 and getting beaten bad in it. I liked the idea of the 3D fighting game, but Tekken was just too difficult for me to play well. DOA was much more simplified, but still managed to maintain the 3D atmosphere. So yeah, I like DOA 2 Hardcore. That's definitely on my list. Three more games, and then we're going to read the comments. Dark Cloud was an amazing game that had an amazing concept I never saw done again. You're in a big empty plane. There's nothing there. It's a big empty field. And then you go into the dungeon, you find buildings, bring them back up to the empty plane, lay them out. Now you've got a town to discover. Not only do you have a town to discover, but in that town, you've got weapons and stuff that you can find and buy and enjoy looting and exploring the dungeon. What a great game Dark Cloud was. I never got to play Dark Cloud 2, but people tell me the first one's better. Why haven't we seen that done again? Taking a dungeon crawler, hack and slash kind of game, and fusing it with like a city builder. Never seen that fusion of gaming mechanics ever again since Dark Cloud. And that's on the PS2, and you better believe that's a PS2 classic. Last two games I'm just going to read off by name because I don't know them personally very well. I just know they're beloved. Katamari Damacy, everyone loves that game. That was a huge game that kind of really didn't come across my lexicon, so I've never had the chance to play it. And Xenosaga, which I have. I got Xenosaga from GameStop for like $2.99 when I was in college, and I don't think I've put it in the machine even once, even one time. And I've had that game for almost 10 years. I think it might be time to sell it. Or play it. I haven't decided yet. Alright. That's just a random list. Again, this was a list that I put together just sitting down and putting my brain power into memories of me in the PS2, as well as just like looking at some of the lists of what people loved about the PS2. Like if you get on Google right now and you look up best PS2 games, you're going to see Twisted Metal Black. You're going to see Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. You're going to see Grand Theft Auto 3. A lot of those games. Beyond that, I can't remember. But yeah. So, what memories do you guys have about the PS2? Any cool ones? Look, the PS2. I mean, anything when it relates to video games. The important thing is to reach out and find what you can't find on Wikipedia. Those are the gems that are worth bringing up and sharing. All right. Now, for me, it was the PS2 launch. In life, when the PS2 came out, this was the only time I ever went to a midnight launch, and I've told the story many times on the air. But we went with my older brother. I have a feeling that modern day midnight launches go really differently than this, because I know you go to Best Buy, and Best Buy has like a line out the door. That's not what this was. This was like a select private group of about 15 people. And we were outside of the mall at midnight. Now you got to understand, where I lived, danger. This was not a place you wanted to be after midnight. So we were just like huddled in together. Look, the mall, let's see, there's a security guard outside the mall. He won't let anybody in. And then once the clock struck midnight, there was the security guard, and he had a representative from GameStop, and they would bring people in like 2 at a time to get their systems and go. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I can't remember if he would bring people in or if he just brought the systems out and they gave them to people that way. Because I do remember these were like pre-orders. This was not something you could just go line up for. You had to have it arranged that you were going to be there, and everything was all set in motion and your system was set aside. Because this was the PS2 launch, man. People were lined up for this system. I remember this was the first system I remember hearing stories about people doing underhanded things like getting in fights, trying to rob people to get their games. There was a story about a guy who waited overnight, to get like one of those spots in the front of the line. And then when he finally got there, he just like sold his spot to somebody else, and that was the whole point. He wasn't really interested in being the first person to get a PS2. He just wanted money, so he sold it to somebody else. That's the PS2 era. That's what I think of when I think of the PS2 era. The games I actually probably remember playing more than anything else came later in life. Not during the launch era, but later when I actually got a hold of mine. When I think back to the launch era, it's weird. I don't really remember what we played then. I remember Metal Gear Solid 2 was a long way off at that time. I remember I was really into like first-person shooters on the computer. That was what I loved. I was like playing Quake, online. This is when Team Fortress was like making history. on GameSpy. I was playing Half-Life mods. I can't remember if I played Counter-Strike or not. I think I that might have come later. I don't know. But yeah, I saved up and bought the CD version of Half-Life. And I was getting mods for that, like They Hunger and stuff like that. That's what I was doing during those days. We had that PS2, but I remember one of the games that my older brother got was like Madden 2001. That was a launch title. He picked that up, and we weren't sports fans. We weren't sports guys. So, I mean, at the time, it was really cool. I remember Madden 2001 or whatever the Madden was at the time was a huge step forward. I remember my brother pointing out it was the first Madden game where you could see like reflections in the helmets. Which now seems quaint, right? Because all of the games at this point are like tiny little steps forward. But that one was a big deal. Yeah, so PS2 history didn't really happen for me until later. It didn't happen until I got to sink my teeth into Final Fantasy XII and really play Resident Evil 4 for the first time in a big way. I have my head cocked right now because I'm looking over to my shelf. Just thinking back. I remember probably watching my brother play stuff more than playing myself. He had Blood Rain. I remember watching him play almost all the way through Blood Rain. Very weird. Alright, boys and girls. Let's do this. Last week, I botched the podcast release. I uploaded it to YouTube, but I didn't hit the right button, so it didn't publish. And I was able to publish it from my phone halfway through the day. So because of that, because it didn't make that Monday morning release, we're kind of dry on comments. But we did get a couple, so bear with me. That's one reason. Also, I released a ton of videos this past week. Oh, that's right. I did the videos. Okay, so let's do this. And I make this mistake every week. I got to go look at the comments to the back end. That's how we got to do this. I did a bunch of videos this week. I tried my hand at streaming, and it just takes the streams and puts them up as videos, which is kind of nice. So we played Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries mode. We played Final Fantasy VII. It was great. It was a good time, man. It was a good time. For streams, I haven't picked out a day that I want to do my streams, but keep your eyes peeled in the middle of early in the morning for brief periods of time, and then I might gravitate towards a Wednesday evening. I don't know. I'm going to do some more sporadic streaming, and we'll settle into a time. It's kind of hard for me to pick out a time now when the new baby's a month away. Because I might pick a date that works now, and then when the baby gets here, it is what it is. Actually, let me amend that. When the baby gets here, streaming is probably going to be out because I'm going to have to be able to go at a moment's notice. And I don't want to have a live camera and be like, oh, got to run, and then just let it tick. So, I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned on that. Alright, Death Adder writes on the Dead by Daylight video. Yeah, I haven't put a Dead by Daylight video out in quite a while. I put this out actually because I got a comment on Dead by Daylight from, let's see, a year ago. Yeah, here we go. Julia writes, this game looks fun. Should I get Dead by Daylight or Friday the 13th? Nice juke, by the way. Alright, so a few things about this. Dead by Daylight for sure, and I left a text comment because I wanted to get that out there right away. But that video that I made, Killer Juke, that was I had just got Dead by Daylight, and I put in a bunch of times since then. So I had to put out a new one where I kind of knew what I was doing. It's a tough game. I'm not great at it, and I lose a lot. But I went back and watched that old video, and it was really cringy to me. Oh, it was really cringy. But that's the way it goes. I believe when you make cringy material, you should go ahead and put it out, and don't be ashamed of it. And when you mature, there's no reason to hide it. So there it is. But more to the question, Dead by Daylight versus Friday the 13th. I liked Friday the 13th more when they were both active. I think Friday the 13th has cooler models. Friday the 13th is more of an ode to the 80s, right? Especially when that 80s pop music and they're doing their 80s dance before the monster comes out. But that game died. They got sued out of business, and they don't really release updates for it anymore. Now, at the time, I didn't think much of it. And it's still populated. You can still get it and play it, and people play. But you'll start to experience that, hey, this is the same thing over and over and over again. Now, Dead by Daylight, they have seasonal events that happen, right? New maps come out, new killers come out all the time. The game feels like it's living. And that's why I like Dead by Daylight. That's one reason why I like Dead by Daylight. There's little nuanced balance issues, but I don't think it's worth going over all that right now. Big picture, you get Dead by Daylight. It's an active game. I would also recommend getting Discord if you don't have it. Get Discord, get involved in the Dead by Daylight Discord. That way you can talk to people when you play. A lot of ladies play this game. I've noticed that when you play horror-themed games, a lot of the women really enjoy horror-themed games. I don't have any explanation for it. It's just a phenomena that I've noticed. That's one difference that you hear me talk about a lot, is that Dead by Daylight doesn't have any inherent voice chat to it, and Friday the 13th did. Friday the 13th, you could just like, hey, I'm the killer, I'm coming to get you, and everybody could just kind of talk in the middle of the match. And I thought it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with it, but for some reason they didn't build that into Dead by Daylight. So you have to use Discord externally to make it work. So that was a fun question to answer, because you're asking me which of two games I really, really enjoyed is better. Oh, if I could say one small thing for Friday the 13th, it went down to $4 in the Steam sale, and it absolutely is worth $4. Like, I paid $20 for it, and at the time I felt like I got a deal because I paid $20 and I put 40 hours into it, right? So the return was good. If you can get it for $5, then absolutely get it, but regular price and all other metrics, Dead by Daylight's your game. Moving on, we got Desm101, who wrote on the Mercenaries mode stream. I'm sure I can't play this good at 5:30 in the morning, and I appreciate that, man, because I was pretty upset about that chainsaw guy decapitating me, and I went back and played that again several times since, and it keeps happening. I didn't even realize at the time that that guy is like twice the size of the normal chainsaw guys and is actually holding a double chainsaw, like a chainsaw with two blades. I didn't realize that. So I would shoot him and it wouldn't do anything, and he would just come and kill me. It's very frustrating. I will say that the Mercenaries mode for Resident Evil 4 is one of the harder ones. It's harder than 5 or 6, and that's all I've played. I can't remember how 3 goes, so I don't know. Yeah, thanks. Swingle on the same stream writes, I'm impressed how much style this game has over substance. I would like to hear you expand on that, because I don't really know what you mean. But, yeah, it's a very stylish game. It's got some... Okay, the Ada Wong match that you can play, or a campaign that you can play after you beat the game. It's not DLC in Resident Evil 4. You just get to have it for free. I played it, and if you've never played it, I don't want to spoil it for you. But in the first, 5-10 minutes of that campaign, it's a pretty mind-blowing tie-in as far as I'm concerned. They did a great job tying it into, the Leon campaign. Great job. Very stylish. Yeah. And then in the Final Fantasy VII stream, I had some sound issues early on, which were kind of crippling. And Swingle writes, RIP sound quality. And yes, you're right. Rest in pepperoni. Desm101 writes, darn, I missed the stream. I remember that happening a lot, where you can easily beat a boss and die after a random encounter. Lol. This part where you finally get out of Midgar was so cool. It felt like a big game world. Then it really opens up, and it seemed in a massive scale. Yeah, man. I just got finished talking about all like the memories I had of the PS2 era. The PS1 era was ushered in by Final Fantasy VII, and that scene in Final Fantasy VII is the keystone moment that unlocked the PS1 era. This was the scene, watching them break out of the Midgar building and jump in the cars, steal the cars off the showroom floor. Cloud gets on that motorcycle and guns it, right, and pulls that sword and starts swinging it around. This was the moment where I was really like, this machine is the baddest machine we have ever seen. Because I didn't know anything about like all of the amazing gems that were going on behind the scenes on the Sega Saturn. I wouldn't find out about those until later in life. But at that moment, this was like we're in some new uncharted territory. It was one of those things that I'll remember forever. Like the first time you see the T-Rex in Tomb Raider. That was a big moment. You're right, brother. Hope to see you in another stream at some point. we'll figure out some way to make that feasible. Death Adder writes, this game looks, this is about Dead by Daylight. This game looks so simple, almost boring at a glance, but good lord, hands down, one of my all-time favorite games. Dead by Daylight, the crack cocaine of video games. And you can read that on TCR with a 4K face. I actually don't want to scream that part because I kind of hate it when Bithead 1000 screams that with a 4K face. I kind of always mute it when he does that. It's like, all right, buddy, I'm listening through my earphones. Please don't scream in my ears. But yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Right, we talked earlier about what was it now? Clock Tower 3 being a game where you don't have any way to fight back. And now we see Dead by Daylight is a modernized idea of that formula, right? I would say those two games are somewhat related in that way. I like Dead by Daylight a lot better, but yeah, it's a great game. Great game. What else we got? He says, the doctor is a not nice man. I'm going to clean this up a little bit for the air because I try and keep it clean. When he's in shock treatment mode, or whatever it's called, that's when your location is given away. He can do it as much as he wants, even as a troll camper killer. I refuse to play the doctor because he makes the game so unfun for survivors. You can hide from the doctor in the locker. His shock treatment doesn't give away your location in there. Interesting. What I find most interesting is the old video I made of Dead by Daylight, the one that I talked about from way back when I started. I faced off against the doctor in that one. And it must have been somebody who was also new because he didn't capitalize on any of the opportunities I gave him. Yeah, I made it out in that one. And the doctor kills me a lot because what happens is I can't work on generators. Right? He gets in your head, and then the little prompt that you have to hit the space bar, it appears all over the screen. My brain just can't make that happen. I can't like trace to the new spot on the screen and hit the prompt at the right time. It just doesn't work for me. So yeah, I haven't reached a point where I auto disconnect at any given killer, but I have reached a point where all it takes is one bad game with the doctor, and I have to alt F4 out and be done for a while. Yeah. Dead by Daylight is an awesome game, but it's also one of these games where it's like I kind of shied away from talking about it on the air because there was a period of time where I was just playing it so much. I would finish TCR, I would play Dead by Daylight all week, and then it would be time to talk about video games again, and I really couldn't talk about anything because my headspace was just like, Dead by Daylight, Dead by Daylight. I know the killers, I know the patterns, I know where to run, I know what to look for, I know who I know who is worth playing with. I know behavioral patterns. I can look at killers and tell who is good and who is bad based on certain subtle movements. If they check certain areas of the map first, I know they're no good. If I find somebody who's really bad, then I can circle around them because they're stuck in first-person view. I think of the terrible things people did to me when I try and play killer, and I can replicate those and be an awful person. That is what was running through my head, and I was like, all right, this is no way to talk about. There's no way to host a video games program. But I mean, that's what that game does. That game took over for me. So, Danger Will Robinson, or not? Maybe it's just that good. I don't know. All right, boys and girls. Let's see. How are we doing now? Wow, we're an hour and 9 minutes in. We're ready to wrap the show. I don't have the thing handy. I like to play the. Oh, hey, maybe I can use my hardware. This is gonna be terrible. Yeah, this is gonna be terrible. I'm not gonna do this. So let's just do some well wishing. Look, this is fun. I had a great time. I probably had more fun recording this week's episode than in a long time, just because it was fun to talk about the PS2, not just to talk about it and to get the list of games, although that was fun. It was fun to go there in my headspace. Do you guys know what I mean when I say that? It's like to really not just recite the words, but think back and really remember. Because the PS2 came out in an era when I was young, and the world was big, and I still had a lot of hope for a lot of things, and I thought things would turn out fine. bad things hadn't happened for me yet. Now, I would learn later in life that things do turn out fine. A lot of the time, they can turn out fine. But that era was when I still had those wide eyes that a child has. So it's fun to go back there in my head. And I hope that you're able to do that a little bit as well. And as we move on towards the things that we got to accomplish this week, be they school, work, maybe you're a boyfriend, or maybe you're a girlfriend, maybe whatever. Maybe you're just trying to make it out of bed tomorrow and get both feet on the floor and get dressed in the morning. Whatever it is that you're setting out to do, by God, I hope you do it and be successful. And I'll see you next week.